Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good day for you all, guys. How are you guys? I hope you are still healthy in your home or where you are there, and stay safe. Okay, my name is Shahril bin Sayuti. My metric number is 261733. Okay, before I go through for my parts, I want to thanks for my group's members who they present about their parts.
My name Mozakon Rahmat. My metric number 265272.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. My name is Nur Aisha binti Hashfuddin and my metric number is 259388.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hello everyone. My name is Muhammad Iqmal bin Muhammad Arifin and my metric number is 256466.
My name is Siti Khatijah binti Arifin and my matrix number is 2623 and 25.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Hazikoh binti Abdullah Halik, 262335.
Assalamualaikum. Today, our group will present about the Keynesian school developments in Keynes. In previous chapter, we have learned a brief overview of the Keynesian school and discussed Keynes' major ideas. Now, in this chapter, we will examine the ideas of several subsequent contributors to Keynesian economics. Several important economists have moved their version of Keynes' approach to economics directly into the mainstream of macroeconomic theory. Prominent among them were Alvin Hansen and Paul Samuelson. The first section of this chapter will cover Hansen ideas, and next section will cover Samuelson ideas. The third section look at the ideas of post-Keynesian economics, who contend that the contemporary neoclassical synthesis between Keynesian macroeconomics and neoclassical microeconomics incompatible with Keynes' own ideas. Finally, we discuss the ideas of contemporary new Keynesian economists. Alvin H. Hansen. Alvin H. Hansen, 1887 until 1975, was born in Vibok, South Dakota, where he spent his early years of education in there. He enrolled at Yankton College, where he graduated in 1910. He received his PhD from the University of Wisconsin in 1918. After completing his PhD, he continues to teach at Brown University and the University of Minnesota. At Minnesota, he published Business Cycle Theory 1927, a book that earned him a reputation as being one of the nation's leading macroeconomics scholars. In 1937, 1 year after Keynes' publication of the General Theory, Hansen joined the faculty at Harvard. Her earlier had pointed out the mathematical error in Keynes' treatise on money, and his initial reaction to the general theory was less than enthusiasm. But Hansen soon changed his opinion after following deeper study of Keynes' system of ideas. For several years, he and his students at Harvard made Keynes' work and its policy implication the central focus of their fiscal policy seminar. Several of those attending this seminar later become prominent contributors to economics and public policy. such as John Dunlop, Walter Salan, Paul Samuelson, Paul Swayze. In 1941, Hansen published Fiscal Policy and Business Cycle, which supported Keynes' analysis of the macroeconomic problem of the 1913 and continuous policies by government to stabilize the economy. Hansen often testified before congressional committees on his policy view and Keynesian principle. Because of his strong advocacy of government intervention to promote full employment, people call him the American Keynes. Hansen's influence was international. 10 of his books were translated into one or more languages. Totally 29 translation. One of these, a guide to Keynes, became familiar to thousands of graduate students who use it in their struggle to understand the more esoteric section of Keynes' the general theory. The Tick-Hansen synthesis. Synthesis. 1 year after the publication of the general theory, John R. Hicks, which we have learned in the previous chapter, published an important journal article, Mr. Keynes and the Classic Recommended Interpretation. Hicks point out the Keynes theory of interest rate and hence his theory of income balance. Indefinitely, figure 21.3 in the previous chapter show us that Keynes view interest rate as determined by liquidity, option, money demand and money supply. Once the market interest rate is determined, then the level of investment become larger. Along with consumption expenditure, investment determine aggregate expenditure and thus the level of national income and domestic product. But he rightly states the Keynes liquidity option. The table itself depends on the level of national income. At higher income level, people want to save more money to buy the amount of good and service available. They have a larger transaction demand for money. Therefore, the level of income depends on the interest rate, but the interest rate depending on income level. Uh, the level of income depends on the interest rate through investment, but the interest rate depending on income level through liquidity option. He suggested a way to resolve this interdependency and in so doing develop a unified economic model that synthesizes the Keynesian and neoclassical perspective. Hansen elaborated on Hicks' article in his Monetary Theory and Fiscal Policy 1949 and in chapter 7 of A Guide to Keynes. Today we refer to the Hicks-Hansen synthesis as the ISLM model. The IS symbolizes equality between investment I and saving S after multiply adjustment have occurred. The LM symbolizes equality between the demand for money L and the supply of money M. All values in the ISLM model are in real rather than nominal.
Now I will continue the presentation and my part is ISLM model. The IS curve shows a potential point of equilibrium in the good market. The curve represents all the combination of interest rate and level of income at which paid investment will be equal to planned saving. The IR curve shows potential point of equilibrium in the money market. It indicates all the combination of interest rate and level of income at which money supply will be equal to money demand. The equilibrium interest rate and level of income are determined where the IS and LM curve intersect. This is the only combination of interest and income where there is equilibrium in both market, which is a good market, and the money market. Hansen and others demonstrate that it is easy to add government spending G and taxation T to the ISLM model and use it to analyze the interest rate and income effect of the alternative fiscal and monetary policies. Now we move to IS curve and the derivation of it. The IS curve represents all the combination of interest rate and level of income at which planned investment equals to planned saving. It is derived from the investment demand function shown in graph A, a 45-degree line which is graph B, and the saving function which is graph C. To demonstrate the derivation of IS curve, we will begin with graph A in the figure and proceed clockwise to B, C, and D. Graph A shows the investment demand curve, indicating the inverse relationship between the interest rate, which is the small I, and the investment, which is T by capital I. Suppose that the interest rate is small I1, then as we see from A1 on the curve, the level of investment will be the capital I1. Graph B, the 45-degree line, enables us to measure investment spending vertically as well as horizontally. By directing a line outward from A1 in graph A to point B1 on the 45-degree line in B, we transfer the I1 of the investment from the horizontal axis in graph A to the vertical axis in B. Graph C shows the Keynesian saving function. As income, which is Y, increase, the level of saving, which is S, rises by fraction. The fraction is the slope of the saving function. N is Keynes NPS. A potential level of equilibrium income will occur at C1 on the saving function. Because at this point, I1 of the investment is matched by an equal amount of saving, which is S1. By dropping a vertical line downward from point C1 on the saving function to the horizontal axis of graph C, we discover that income is Y1. Extending the line further downward to graph D, we establish point D1. At an interest rate of I1, the level of income that is consistent with equilibrium in the goods market is Y1. By selecting other interest rate in graph A and following the procedure just outlined, other combination of interest rate and income at which investment will equal saving are determined. For example, at an interest rate of small I2, investment and income are greater than capital I1. Our procedure thus establish point D2 in graph D. Connecting all points such as D1 and D2 yields the IS curve. No single determined level in income exists in this case. Depending on the rate of interest, income may be at a level represented by the IS curve. Now we continue to the LM curve and the derivation of it. The LM curve shows potential point of equilibrium in the money market. It indicates all the combination of interest rate and level of income at which money supply and demand are equal. It is derived from the speculative demand for money, which is A, the money supply, which is B, and the transaction demand for money, which is C. The general technique for deriving the LM curve is similar to that for the IS curve. We begin with graph A, which relate the interest rate I to the amount of money people desire to hold for speculative purpose, LS. At low interest rate I, people will hold large cash balance for speculative purpose and few bonds because the expected rise in the interest rate will cause the price of bonds to fall. Such a rise would create a capital loss for those holding bonds. At high interest rate, on the other hand, people will economize on their holding of cash balance because the opportunity cost of holding cash is thought to be large. We select a specific interest rate such as I1 in graph A and observe that people will desire to hold at S1 for speculative purpose. Graph B shows the total money supply. Increase in the money supply would be shown as parallel upward shift of the line. In equilibrium, the quantity of money supply M must equal the amount of money demand L. The demand for money consists of money desire for speculative purpose LS, which in this case we have determined to be LS1, and the amount people desire for buying goods and services LT. By extending a line upward from A1 to B1, we observe that the amount of money needed for transaction purposes is LT1 minus LS1. This transaction balance will support national income of Y1 as shown by C1 in graph C. Next, we drop a line vertically from C1 and extend a line horizontally from A1 to get point D1 in graph D. This point, as is true for all points on the LM curve, represent potential equilibrium between supply and demand in the money market. If the interest rate is I1, the level of national income required for equilibrium in the money market is Y1. Other points such as D2 are similarly derived, and the locus of such point constitute the LM curve. Now I will explain the last part of mine, which is ISLM equilibrium. ISLM equilibrium combine the IS and LM curve. The equilibrium, interest rate, and level of income are determined where the IS and LM curve intersect. This is the only combination of the interest and the income where there is equilibrium in both market, which is good and money market.
Now I want to go through to my part, and I hope you all guys stay tuned and follow my presentation. For my part, I want to explain for you who is Paul A. Samuelson. So I hope after we finish my presentation, you all know who is Paul A. Samuelson. Okay, let's go. Okay, for your information, Paul Samuelson is born at May 15, 1915 at Gary, Indiana, US. Okay, for your information too, Gary is a city in Lake Country, Indiana at United States. Oh, and Paul A. Samuelson is died at December 13, 2009. The age in 94. Institutions. Okay. Institutions for Paul A. Samuelson is Institute of Technology, or we call it MIT. Okay. For you all know, MIT is a private land grant research university in Cambridge, United States. The institute has a urban campus that extends more than a mile alongside the Carlos River. Okay, the institute also encompasses a number of major off-campus facilities, such as MIT Lincoln Laboratory, school or traditions. Okay, for school and tradition of Paul A. Samuelson is New Keynesians. Okay, for you all know, New Keynesian economics is a school of macroeconomics thoughts that was developed in the post-war period from the writings of John Maynard Keynes. Okay, a group of economics, which is Johns, Hicks, and Paul Samuelson also attempt to interpret and formalize Keynes' writing and to sanitize it with the new classical models of economics. Okay, now we go through for where Paul Samuelson is studying. Okay, for he take a BA, the Paul Samuelson is study at University of Chicago. For Paul Samuelson study in PhD is at Harvard University. Now, I want to tell you about what awards the Paul Samuelsons get. Okay, first is a John Beach Gladys Medal. Paul Samuelson gets this award at 1947. The John Beach Clark Medal is awarded by the American Economic Associations to that Americans economics under the age of 40 who is adjudged to have made a significant contribution to economic thought and knowledge. Okay, second award for Paul Samuelson is the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics Science. Person get in 1970. Okay. The Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics Science is the official, the Rich Bank Prize in Economic Science in memory of Alfred Nobel. And last for awards to Paul Samuelson is National Medal of Science. National Medal of Science he get at 1996. Okay, National Medal of Science is the honor bestowed by the President of the United States to individuals in science and engineering who have made important contributions to the advancement of knowledge in fields of behavior and social science, biology, chemistry, and mathematics, and so on. Okay, now I want to go through for next. Okay, for this part, I want to tell you about contributions of Paul Samuelson. Okay, for the first is new classical synthesis. Okay, the new classical synthesis or the new classical Keynesian synthesis was a post-World War II economic movement in economics that work towards solving the macroeconomic. The next is the mathematical economics. Okay, the mathematical economics is the application of mathematical method to represent theories and analysis problems in economics. Okay, and the next is economic methodology. Okay, for the economic methodology is the study of methods, especially the scientific methods in relation to economic, including principle underlying economic reasoning. Okay, next is international trade. Okay, international trade is the exchange of capital goods and service across international borders or territories because there is a need or want of goods or services. And now we go through to economic growth. Okay, once can define economic growth as the increase in the inflation adjusted market value of the goods and services. Okay, and the last one is public good. Okay, public good. In economics, a public good is a good that is both non-excludable and non-rivalrous. For such utilities, users cannot be barred from accessing and or using them for failing to pay for them. Okay, now I think that's all for my parts, and I wish thanks for you all because you all stay tuned for my presentations. And so I hope you all know who is Paul Samuelson when you hear my presentation. Okay, guys, now I think that's all from me, and I'm pass this presenter for my group's members. See you all next time, guys. Thank you.
Okay, for my part, I will present about the multiplayer accelerator interaction. In 1939, Samuelson published two papers in which he identified and explored the interaction between the principle of multiplier and accelerator. Okay, this interaction has become of the foundation of modern business cycle theory. Okay, neither idea taken singularly was new. Kant developed the notion of multiplier and Kim uh, used it as a central feature of his theory. Okay, John Maurice Clark discussed the acceleration principle as early as 1917. Okay, he argued that fluctuation in the output and price of capital goods are much greater than those for the consumption good they produce. Okay, even if the demand for the consumer goods continue to grow, the change in the rate of growth will be transmit back in intensified force or acceleration to the capital goods sectors. Okay, a cessation of growth in the demand for final goods thus lead to a sharp decline in the demand for capital goods. Hansen was aware there was an interaction between the two principles and suggests to Samuelson that he used his mathematical skill to explore the idea. Okay, using the different equation, Samuelson demonstrated that change in income, which is the consumption, will depend on the size of the MPC and the size of accelerator's coefficient. The former determine the multiplier and the latter is the change in investment spending induced by a change in the rate of income growth. Samuelson showed that depending on the value of multiplier and accelerator and whether an increase in investment is continuous, an initial autonomous increase in investment could produce a wide variety of outcomes, ranging from lasting increase in income to an ever increasing level of income. Okay. A change in one component of AD can lead a multiplier final change in equilibrium of GDP. Okay, the process of investment can turn into income as we know that the former calculation for the value of multiplier is multiplier equal to 1 divided by sum of the propensity to save plus tax plus import. Okay, an increase in autonomous investment will increase in income through the multiplier. Then the increase in induced investment through accelerator. Therefore, the aggregate demand and income increase by even a large amount. Okay, we'll go to the slide, which is a simple algebra of income determination. Okay, to stimulate the summation approach, we can use the basic Keynesian identity, which is y equal to c plus I plus g plus x minus m, which is y stand for income, c consumption, I for investment, g government expenditure, x for export, and m to import. Okay, consumption spending, take revenue, investment spending, which is due to accelerator principle, and import all increase as income increase. The equation can be formulated for each of the independent variable in the identity. The most complicated equation is the one for C, which is consumption, that we can derive as C equal to A plus BY, where A is the amount of consumption spending that is independent of the level of income, and B is the marginal propensity to consume. Total before tax consumption, C equal to the autonomous level of consumption plus the consumption related to the level of income. The latter is found by multiplying Y by the marginal propensity to consume, which is B. But as shown in equation, C equal to A plus B in bracket Y minus T. Income and therefore consumption will be lowered by the taxes, which is T. In equation T equal to TO plus TY, we see that taxes consist of those, if any, that must be paid irrespective of the level of income is referred to TO, and those that rise as income rise is referred with TY. The marginal propensity to tax is T. By substitute equation T equal to TO plus TY into C equal to A plus BY minus BT, will get the final equation C equal to A plus BY minus BTO minus BTY. Okay, we will go to the next equation, which is equation for investment, where I equal to IO plus ZY, where the IO is investment that is independent of income, and Z is the marginal propensity to invest. The term Z then shows the change of investment that occur when income rise. This is the accelerator notion. Okay, we go to the other equation, which is equation for G, X, and M. Okay, where GO, XO, and MO are autonomous level of income of government spending, export spending, and import spending, respectively, and M is the marginal propensity to import. Take note that total import spending depends on the level of income. Okay, so for the final equation, we substitute is equation to the basic identity equation, then derive to the complex multiplier income equation, which is y equal to 1 minus y equal to 1 over s plus bt plus m minus z in bracket a minus bto plus io plus go plus so and minus mo. Okay, to solve this equation, we divide this equation into two, which is the endogenous and the exogenous variable. For the exogenous variable, we will put them at the right hand side. in the bracket, and for the endogenous variable we will make them as the denominator while a is recognized as exogenous variable. This is because a represent consumption spending that is in, independent of the income, independent independent of income. Okay, the multiplier will smaller the higher the marginal propensity. Okay, the multiplier will smaller the higher the marginal propensity to save, tax and import. The complex multiplier will be larger the higher is the marginal propensity to invest, or the greater is the increase in investment that result from rising income. Okay, that's all from my part. Thank you.
Today I will be presenting about the post-Keynesians. Okay, so about the post-Keynesians, mainstream economics came to include Keynesian principles crafted upon new classical principles of microeconomics. It's all thanks to Samuelson and others. But there is one thing you should understand. Not all keen scholars accept these new classical synthesis, and some of them denied both ISLM interpretation of Keynes and standard microeconomics. So among the chief of post-Keynesian critics was a group of economists at Cambridge, England, and they include Piero Sraffa, Nicholas Caldor, Joan Robinson, Luigi Passaniti, John K. Galbraith, and Sidney Winthrop. So many of the post-Keynesians rely on the work of Polish economist named Michael Kalecki, who in 1933 had offered a Keynesian-like theory of total employment prior to the general theory. So about post-Keynesians is a small yet diverse group of economists, which some individual ideas within this paradigm differ from expressed by others. So as you can see on the left, there is a picture of Michael Kalecki. So Michael Kalecki was a Polish economist. Over the course of his life, Kalecki worked at the London School of Economics, University of Cambridge, University of Oxford and Warsaw School of Economics, and was an economic advisor to the government of Poland, Cuba, France, Israel, Mexico, and also India. So as you can see, there are several basic tenets of this set of ideas, and I will say there are 5 basic tenets. The first one is neo-Ricardian view of production, value and distribution. Second is markup pricing. Third is endogenous money. Fourth is pronounced cyclical instability, and the last one is need for an income policy. So the first one is neo-Ricardian view of production, value, and distribution. In 1960, Piero Sraffa published Production of Commodities by Means of Commodities, a prelude to a critique of economic theory. So basically, Piero Sraffa, he reconstructed Ricardo's production and value theory in modern form, or in modern way. So according to Sraffa, the pattern of demand for various products, it has no effect on price patterns. Instead, there are effects only on the scale of output in each industry. So relative values, prices, and profits, if wages are given, they are determined by the use of production techniques used to produce composite standard commodity. So composite standard commodity is which consists of basic commodity in economic. So basic commodities is goods that enter in the production of all other commodities. So they are in essence capital goods, and both appear as input and output. So the key feature of composite standard commodity is a change in either wages or profits affects input exactly the same way it affects output. So the composite standard commodity is Ricardo's elusive invariable measure of value or of relative prices. So according to this theory, so novel conclusion from Sraffa's theory, there is level of domestic output is entirely independent of how it is distributed between wages and profits. And any distribution of wages and profits is consistent with a particular level of output. John Robinson and other post-Keynesians expanded Sraffa's unconventional theme. So John Robinson is a British economist, and she was a central figure known in post-Keynesian economics. According to John Robinson, the actual distribution of income, wages, and prices depends on three things, which is it depends on the class struggle, depends on the public policies that alter the distribution, and also depends on the rate of investment. So for the rate of investment, she mentioned that the higher rates of investment, so they will be increasing in profit share. According to Robinson, she also argued that it is desirable and possible for society to control the distribution of income. So how to be done? This can be done through the socialization of investment, the public ownership of the means production, and also income policies by government policies. In income policies, government tend to control price and wages. Uh, John Robinson also believed these policies are firmly rooted in the proper interpretation of Keynes' the general theory. As you can see, there is the book there, the Keynes, the general theory of employment, interest, and money. And John Robinson also addressed herself as left-wing Keynesians. The second one is markup pricing. So for the markup pricing, the price is set by oligopolistic corporation. And for finance investment, they are largely contributed from retained profits. To reach certain level of profits, the oligopoly set prices above current cost. The price do not reflect current demand condition. Rather, they reflect funds requirement for planned investment expenditure the firm consider is necessary. If it's to adjust its capacity sufficiently to meet expected future demand. So for the cost, when the cost rise, so automatically the firm increase the price too. It is to maintain markup over cost. So as you can see, there is some example of oligopolistic corporation, Kellogg's, Quaker. For technology, you can see company from Apple, Huawei, and also Samsung. Uh, I will explain about oligopoly and what are the characteristics. So for oligopoly corporation, the firms sell identical or differentiated products. Next, entry and exit barriers. So basically, it has entry and exit barriers. So the third one is non-price competition is common. Imperfect competitions, few of seller, uh, interdependence. Rivals are aware of what other rivals are doing. And the last one is collusions. Okay, so the third one is endogenous money. Contrary to the view of Fisher and Friedman, post-Keynesians regard the stock of money being essentially endogenous to economy changing in response to change in the level of wages. The need of trades dictate the supply of money. Keynes himself pointed out that money comes into existence along with the debts. So inflation arises from the fight over the shares of the distribution income. uh, when wages increase, it costs production cost increase. So it will create a greater demand on firm for working capital to finance. Hence, the business borrowing rises. So the money stock also will increase. Number four is pronounced cyclical instability. The economy is inherently unstable, so investment must grow sufficiently to keep national income and output growing at a steady rate. This is because of period of alternating environment of business optimism and pessimism. It does not often. So when investment is less than required to maintain a steady rate of growth, the economy will recede or in other words, fall back. So the number of unemployment will rise. Point number five is need for an incomes policy. So an income policy limits the average annual wage increase to increase to the nation's annual rate of productivity growth. Similarly, firms are constrained as to how much they can raise prices. So a successful income policy holds down inflation minimizes the redistribution of income from inflation, and also avoids the loss of output associated with anti-inflationary fiscal and monetary policy. So according to post-Keynesians, the class struggle for income shares and markup pricing by oligopolies necessitates a permanent incomes policy. Post-Keynesian economists, they are likely to agree that inflation can be controlled enough through conventional instrument of fiscal and monetary policy. They regard inflation as resulting not necessarily from any excess demand for good, but rather from a more fundamental conflict over distribution of available income and also output. The conventional policy instrument, by curtailing the level of economic activity, simply reduce amount of income and output available for distribution, thereby heightening the social conflict underlying the inflationary process. And it is for these reasons that post-Keynesian economists, instead of asking incomes policy is necessary or not, have generally moved on to the question how an incomes policy can be made to work effectively and equitably. So this is the example of fiscal policy and monetary policy tools. So I will explain a little bit. So in fiscal policy, the change in government spending and tax rates, while in monetary policy, change in interest rates or money supplies. Fiscal policy set by the government, meanwhile, monetary policy set by a central bank. Uh, in fiscal policy, there is no specific target, meanwhile, in monetary policy, there is target inflation. Fiscal policy side effect on government budget or borrowing. Meanwhile, the side effect monetary policy is on exchange rate and housing markets. And the last one is fiscal policy is strong political dimension to changing tax rates. And in monetary policy, mostly independent from the political process. Post-Keynesian is a flow of thought that is not included in the mainstream economics, which is heterodox economics. So what is heterodox economics? There are three ways to characterize what heterodox economics is. The first one is it is not orthodox, mainstream, or neoclassical economics. What do these terms mean? It has some specific characteristics, presumably from different approaches. What are these characteristics? So the collection of different approaches, more or less coherent sociological groups, perhaps with divisions within them. And the last one is the second way has proved to be elusive. Way to approach is using the first to say what it is not, and the third draw from different approaches but attempt to find some analytical features as characteristics. So there is some weakness in post-Keynesians in methodology used. So the first one is post-Keynesians use different methodology and economic model from the mainstream thinking. Second, post-Keynesians do not have an agreed economic model that combines all the presented model. And the last one is post-Keynesians, some policies are difficult to implement. The next is there are some opinions that can be accepted uh, and used in the mainstream thinking. So there is a research by modern post-Keynesian scholars can be found in the Journal of Post-Keynesian Economics.
Okay, next. For my part, I will share about the new Keynesian economics. The new Keynesians reject the neo-Ricardian value theory of the post-Keynesians. They also reject the post-Keynesians call for income policies, citing the resource misallocation resulting from these policies and the poor historical success of wage and price control in reducing inflation. Instead, they have passed a narrower line of inquiry by refocusing their attention of the traditional Keynesian question of why recession occur. Suppose that price and nominal wages are perfectly flexible. Initial equilibrium is at point A, AD1 intercept with AS1. If AD1 decrease from AD1 to AD2 and AS remain as AS1, price level will decrease from P1 to P2, from A to B. Real output will decrease from its full employment level Q3 to less than full employment output Q1. The power price level and greater unemployment will enable producers to decrease nominal wages, as will shift rightward from AS1 to AS2. The new equilibrium will be at C, AD2 intercept with AS2, and real output return to Q3, so recession automatically ended. However, according to new Keynesian economics, price and nominal wages are inflexible downward. Instead of moving the economy quickly from A to B to C, A will decrease in AD from AD1 to A2. AD2 will move the economy from A to D, and the real output will decrease from Q3 to Q2. Because wages are inflexible downward, unemployment associated with real output, Q2 will persist until return to AD1. Active fiscal and monetary policy should be implemented to shift AD2 back to AD1. The new economics such as Joseph Stiglitz of Stanford, Oliver Blanchard of Harvard, Stanley Fischer of MIT, George Akerlof of California, Berkeley, Assar Lindberg of the University of Stockholm, and Robert Gordon of Northwestern have offered several possible explanations for downward price and wage rigidity. Next, let's discuss about the reason price and wage rigidity. First, menu cost. Menu cost is the cost of firms resulting in changing its price. Some firms must incur costs when the lower prices. For example, a restaurant must print a new menu. Similarly, other firms establish and print new price lists, communicate the lower price to customers, perhaps through new advertising, print and mail the catalogs and reprice items held in inventory, where menu costs such as these are high, firms may be reluctant to lower their price even when faced with slack demand. Thus, when aggregate demand in the economy declines, price at least for a time may remain fixed while output and unemployment fall. Second, formal and implicit contracts. New Keynesian points out that unions often sign long-term contracts containing built-in nominal wages increase. Wage cuts simply are not option when declines in aggregate demand unexpectedly occur. Instead, firms of lay off workers. Even where contracts are being renegotiated, unions typically resist wage givebacks. Union leaders elected by the majority of numbers often prefer layoff of the rather wage cuts for the money. One common understanding may be the firms will remain existing nominal wage during periods of slack product demand. If formal and implicit contracts permit the workplace, the decline in wage are not forthcoming as AD declines and recession occurs, like unemployment will increase. Third, efficiency wages. Wages higher than market wage paid to encourage higher output, raise workers' morale, and reduce costs associated with turnover. In industry, where the cost of replacing labor are high, efficiency wages increase labor productivity or decrease cost pay of the higher wages. The higher pay raises the relative value of the job as viewed by each worker. It also raises the cost of being terminated or leaving. Firms paying efficiency wage will be reluctant to cut wage rates in response to declines in AD because it will increase the number of quits, dampening productivity and increase the firm's per unit labor costs. And the last one is insider-outsider theory. Insider are employed workers who possess some market power, while outsiders are the unemployed who are unable or unwilling to underbid existing wage rate to gain employment. The reason for this disparity is the firms incur labor turnover costs when they replace insider with outsider. For example, of labor turnover costs, the cost of hiring, firing, and providing firm-specific training. Insider may resist competition with outsider by refusing to cooperate with or harassing outsider who try to underbid the wages of incumbent workers. The firm's output and profit also will suffer. In our conclusion, several important economics like Erwin Hansen and Paul Samuelson helped move their version of Keynes' approach to economics directly into the mainstream of macroeconomics theory. Hicks correctly noted that Keynes' liquidity preference schedule itself depends on the levels of national income. Today, we refer the Hicks-Hansen synthesis as the ISLM model. Paul A. Samuelson identified and explored the interaction between the principle of multiplier and accelerator. However, economics from post-Keynesian did not accept the neoclassical synthesis. They deny both the ISLM interpretation of Keynes and standard microeconomics. They propose, among the others, a new version of Ricardo production and value theory and call for the implementation of income policy. The on the other hand, reject the neo-Ricardian value theory of the post-Keynesian and the call of income policies. Instead, they push a narrower line of inquiry by refocusing their attention on the traditional Keynesian question of why recession occur. According to them, the declines in AD produce declines in real output and corresponding increase in unemployment because the price and nominal wages are inflexible downward. That's all from us. Thank you.